So welcome to this Legal Aid New South Wales Law Week webinar, Your Money and the Law. My name is Kerry Wright and I work in the Community Legal Education branch at Legal Aid New South Wales. I'm here today with Bridget Barker from Legal Aid New South Wales and Lynn Davey from the Community Justice Centre. We also have two Auslan interpreters. Hi everyone.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
So to begin, I want to acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional owners and custodians on whose land we're broadcasting from today, and to extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining the webinar today or watching the recording. The information today is general legal information, not legal advice, but we'll tell you where you can send your clients for specific legal advice. And just a note that on your control panel for the webinar, there's a handout of the presentation we're using today. So feel free to download that and follow along if you prefer that. So Bridget and Lynn, do you want to introduce yourselves and tell us about your roles at your agency? So Bridget, you first.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. I'm a solicitor also working in the Community Legal Education branch at Legal Aid.
Okay, and Lynn?
And good morning, everyone. I've been a mediator for more than 20 years and I've been working for the Community Justice Centres since 2007. So we're a dispute resolution service, helping people to work through their disputes and hopefully reduce their experience of conflict.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to launch a poll question. So I'll just press the button for that now. So the poll question is, have you heard about, and you can choose more than one option, Legal Aid New South Wales, Community Justice Centres, LawAccess New South Wales, and the Legal Problem Guided Pathways. So I'm just waiting for our audience to make their choices as to what they've heard about or not. And then I'll share the results with you. So here are the results. So 80% of people who heard about Legal Aid New South Wales, oh, it's equal, tied equally for the first three, Legal Aid, Community Justice Centres and LawAccess, but nobody's heard about the Legal Problem Guided Pathways. So that's interesting. But we'll be talking about those today, so you will find out all about them. So this is a slide that's just come up, is just an overview of what we're going to talk about today. Legal Aid New South Wales, Community Justice Centres, the guided pathways, common money problems. So we're going to look at being chased for a debt, being owed money and borrowing money, and we'll answer your questions. As I said earlier, this is only legal information, not legal advice, but we'll tell you where you can go for legal help with your money problems. What I'm going to do now is show you a little video about Legal Aid New South Wales. So I'll just start that video so you can watch that.
How can Legal Aid New South Wales help me? Legal Aid is a legal service for people in New South Wales. We can help in lots of ways, not just if you're in trouble with police, going to court or in jail. Let's say you're finding it hard to pay some fines and are behind in your home loan payments. To make things worse, your ex-partner wants to take the kids. Life feels like a tangled knot. Your friend tells you to call our helpline. It's called LawAccess New South Wales. They tell you Legal Aid has lawyers who can help you. You make an appointment and take along your fines and other papers. You can see us at a community organisation or the Legal Aid office near you. Legal advice is free and you can get an interpreter for free too. You're nervous, but our lawyer is friendly and patient and really knows what they're talking about. What you discuss is confidential, which means we can't tell anyone what you say unless you agree. The legal aid lawyer calls the bank for you. They agree to give you a break from paying your loan for a few months. We help you make an appointment with a financial counsellor to sort out your money problems. We also explain that because you're in serious financial hardship, there are different ways to deal with your fines. And about the trouble with your ex-partner, we can talk to you about that too. You feel much better after talking to Legal Aid. Legal Aid New South Wales can help you untangle many legal problems, like with your housing, your job, Centrelink, police troubles, visas, domestic violence, divorce, child support and more. Or if you just think something is unfair, we can tell you if the law can help. Call 1300 888 529 or search online for Legal Aid New South Wales.
Okay, hopefully you all got to see that video. It all worked well. Bridget, did you have anything else to add about Legal Aid New South Wales?
Only that we have offices throughout the state in many regional towns, so people can get advice generally in their local area or in the largest regional town close to them.
And most offices also have outreach to areas outside of their main office too as well, don't they?
Yes, that's right. And with COVID restrictions starting to ease, a lot of offices are starting to do outreach again in smaller towns within their regions.
Okay. So, Lynn, do you want to tell us about community justice centres?
I'd love to. So the community justice centres are funded by the New South Wales state government, and we've been in operation in New South Wales for well over 30 years. We're part of the Department of Communities and Justice, but we're not a legal process. We're an alternative to the court process. And, you know, we provide dispute resolution services, including mediation and conflict management for more complex cases, for anyone residing in New South Wales who has a dispute and is willing to work on the issues. It is a voluntary process, so you know we are asking people voluntarily to come together in mediation, and it's a good first step to resolving their issues. It's a free service. It's provided by the government, and it doesn't cost anyone anything. It's not means tested in any way. It's a confidential process. So as a mediator, I've taken an oath that I won't disclose any details of the mediation. Of course, there are some exceptions to that. If there's any risk of harm to people or to property, and especially children, then obviously we're mandatory reporters. But our legislation does cover us as far as the confidentiality. There's no waiting lists. With COVID, unfortunately, we've been restricted to telephone mediations and audio visual, so using Skype and other means. So that has delayed sometimes the organisational process, but you're normally looking at about 60 days to complete the process, although it can be up to 3 months at the moment. We do all kinds of disputes, and today we're focusing on money matters, but just to let you know that we do neighbour disputes, community organisations, workplace, money matters, parenting plans, property settlements, any kind of dispute that people, we will assess the suitability, and if it's suitable for mediation, then we'll go ahead and organise that mediation. The case coordinators will do the initial intake when you contact the Community Justice Centre, and they'll do a bit of conflict coaching just to see where the dispute's at. Obviously, the sooner the dispute comes to us, the better chance there is of it being resolved.
And I see, Lynn, on this slide, it says money disputes are common at CJC. So I assume you've helped with quite a few of those?
I have mediated hundreds of disputes over money from, you know, the very personal disputes where a friend has lent someone some money and there's been some disagreement over how that money is going to be paid back, or even if it was a loan or was it a gift, to the more formal disputes that come through the courts, the small claims disputes under $20,000, where people may be dissatisfied with the service they've received or the products or the goods, and they're not willing to pay for those things. And also for people who are on the other side of that, who are owed money and are trying to encourage people to pay what's owed to them. So yes, I've mediated many of those disputes.
All right, well, this is our next slide. Do you want to tell us about the CJC mediation, what it involves?
Yeah, so despite the picture, we're not an animal shelter, but we do provide a safe space for people to come together and actually talk about their issues. So if you look at the first picture, you know, there's no communication going down on there. Invariably, communication has broken down by the time they come to the Community Justice Centre, and they're focused on their own perspective and their own issues, not really thinking about what's happening for the other person. The dispute escalates, things get more tense, there's more stress for everybody involved, and they're really pulling in opposite directions there, and to the point where, you know, they're ready to run and hide in that third picture. So what we're doing is turning that around and saying, well, we actually want you to sit and talk to each other. We want you to listen, certainly put forward your perspective, but be prepared to listen to what the other person is saying. And what we're trying to do, just for an instant, is to get the person to think about what's happening for the other person. Put yourself in their shoes just for a moment. I'm not saying your issues are not important, but if you're both working towards a common goal there, and that common goal might be just having some peace in your life after all this stress, then you're on the way to coming up with outcomes and suggestions that each person can live with. And I use those words carefully, can live with. They don't have to be ecstatically happy about it, but we're looking for a win-win situation for everyone, that they can take away and live with the consequences of what they've decided. As a mediator, I'm completely impartial and I don't take sides in the dispute. I'm not there to decide who's right and who's wrong. I'm just there to take them through the mediation process, which I'll talk about in more detail a bit later on.
Okay, thank you. So, Bridget, do you want to tell us about the guided pathways?
Yeah, sure. Guided pathways are a new self-help tool that's available on LawAccess's website. LawAccess is a legal information and referral service, and on their website they've just brought out this new product, I guess you might call it, which allows people to answer a series of questions and through that work out what their legal dispute is and what steps they might be able to take to resolve their legal dispute. As you can see from the slide, there are a number of guided pathways available for different legal issues. And there's mortgage stress, unpaid council rates, recovering money, being chased for money, problems with utilities, and resolving fencing disputes. So these are a self-help tool that people can use to get a little bit more detailed information about steps that they can take in relation to the dispute that they have.
Okay, thank you. So this is our first message. Key message from our webinar is dealing with problems early can help avoid a dispute. So I think both Lynn and Bridget have spoken a little bit about that just then. So Bridget, what are we going to cover today in the webinar?
So the things that we're going to look at today are three different scenarios. One is when you owe money and you're being chased for money by somebody. Another is when you are owed money by someone. And lastly, we'll look at borrowing money. So they're the three topics that we're going to cover.
So take us through this first case study then.
Okay, in this case study, it's about being chased for money. Deepti borrowed $5,000 from a friend to buy a car. Then her casual work stopped and she can't pay. Her friend sent her a letter of demand.
And then what happened?
So Deepti tried to talk to her friend about repaying the debt on an instalment plan, but her friend got angry. Deepti's daughter tells her she could call LawAccess. When she calls LawAccess, they suggest that she look at the online guided pathway to find information to help her deal with her problem.
Okay, well I'll bring that up now. So here's the LawAccess page, Bridget.
Yeah, this is the main page on the LawAccess website, and as you can see, there's a tile in the centre here called Guided Pathways. And if you click on that link, it'll take you to the page that we saw before, where there's a few extra that we couldn't see on that last slide. But this is where the guided pathways are on certain topics, and we're going to have a look at being chased for money.
Okay, it's come up now.
Okay, so there's a few icons that you see when you use the guided pathways. If you click on the question mark, that gives you the meaning of a word. The little red triangle with an exclamation mark in it is something important that you should pay attention to. And then the last icon is a link to a website outside of the pathway.
Okay, so I'll click next.
So this brings up some information, and then here are the questions. So it says, are you an individual being chased for money by someone? That's the first option, and that fits Deepti's situation. So we'll click on that link, answer that question. The next question is, what is your situation? Now, Deepti received a letter of demand from her friend, so we'll select that. Then there's information about responding to a letter of demand, and then it says, how do you want to respond? I agree I owe the money, I want to try to negotiate, I want to ask for more information, or I don't owe the money. Now, Deepti agrees that she owes the money, so we'll select the first one. So this page says admitting the debt. It gives some information.
Okay, and I'll just show that clicking on the little question mark, it comes up. A letter of demand is a letter to a person asking them to pay money that they believe is owed. So I click next.
Yes.
And that's the end.
And then as you can see, there's some information about places you can go to for help.
Okay, so we'll go back to our presentation. So Lynn, do you want to take us through how the CJC would help Deepti in this situation?
So Deepti could contact us, and she could talk through with one of the case coordinators what her situation is, what attempts she's made to try and resolve the dispute, and we assess the suitability for mediation, because mediation is not for everybody. But if we take on the matter, then what we would do is get the details of the person that she owes the money to. And in the first instance, we would write to that person. It's a bit too confronting to get a phone call out of the blue from the community justice centres. So we give them time to digest the information. We give them information about the mediation process, and we say that, we've received a request, a referral for mediation with Deepti, and would they please contact us to talk about it. If they call us straight away, that's great. We can talk through with them. what their issues are and whether they're willing to attend mediation. As I said earlier, it is a voluntary process. If they don't respond to that first letter, we do send up a follow-up, a very nice follow-up letter. You know, maybe you've misplaced the letter and please get in contact with us. And we send a final third letter. So that letter process can take up to 3 weeks, depending, or 4 weeks actually. I think there's 10 days between each letter, depending on, you know, when we hear from the people. But assuming that we do hear from them and everyone's willing to participate in mediation, we would go ahead and we'd organise a date and the time. As I said, only by telephone or Skype or audio visual at the moment. Face-to-face is much better, in my personal opinion, but we haven't been able to do that since about March last year. So we organise a telephone conference and we get the people together and we start the mediation by saying to them, well, we'd like you to each of you to listen to what the other person has to say. So give us an overview, a summary of what the issues are, because we know there's two sides to every sort of story and, you know, more than one perspective. So we listen to what each person has to say and we summarise back so that we don't need to know a lot about the dispute because we're not making decisions for them, but it's just so that we have a handle on what it is that they're trying to sort out. And from those summaries, we make a list. Normally we'd put it on a whiteboard in the room, but we can't do that. We just have to read it out over the phone. And it's a list of the issues that they've both identified that they want to talk about. So in this particular instance, obviously Deepti's got some financial circumstances, which has happened to a lot of people during COVID. And, you know, there may be an opportunity for her to explain that to her friend about why she's not able to repay the money. But whatever issues they raise, that goes on that list. And then what we're asking the people to do is to talk directly to each other, have a conversation and work your way through all the items on that list. We can help as mediators. We can ask questions if something needs to be clarified. And if they get stuck, we can help people to move on. But essentially, this is their opportunity to really engage with each other and have the difficult conversations. Now, when they've done that for as long as they need to, then we actually have a private time, a private telephone conversation with each of them. Particularly important with telephone because we don't have any visual cues about what's happening, whether people are getting angry or upset, so we literally ask them, you know, how's it going for you? Are there any concerns that you want to share with us? And then we get them thinking about the future. So they've spent all that time talking about what's gone on in the past and the history. And when we bring them back together, we want them to put their suggestions on the table, any suggestions for outcomes that they can come up with. And that then becomes a negotiation between the two people. If they do reach an agreement on any or all of the issues, we can write it up for them in a CJC, what we call a good faith agreement. It doesn't have any legal status as such, but if the parties want to turn it into a legal document, they can show it to their legal representatives after the mediation, and it can form the basis for a legal document. And that would be written into the agreement that they've agreed to do that. So it's written in their own words, and it's a record of the things they've discussed and the outcomes that they've come up with during the mediation. If there's no agreement reached, then, you know, there's no pressure. There's no pressure from mediators because it's their mediation and any decisions that are made rest with them. Having said that, 63% of court-referred matters do reach an agreement. That's 2019-2020 stats. It may have dropped a bit since COVID with the challenges of the telephone mediations, but, you know, overall that's a good outcome for people whose dispute has probably escalated to the point where they have ended up in court.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. So we're now going to do a poll with our audience. The question is, if you ignore a letter of demand, nothing will happen. And we want to know whether you think that's true or false. So that's come up there now. If you ignore a letter of demand, nothing will happen. So we get our audience to vote and tell us what they think. Everyone's been quick off the mark, so I'll share those results. And 100% have said false. What do you think, Bridget?
That's correct. A letter of demand is the first step that someone takes if they want to pursue you for a debt that you owe them. So if you ignore it, you do so at your peril, because the next step would be for them to go to the local court and apply to have a statement of claim issued, which means that you're now involved in a legal process.
Thank you. So this is our next key message to you all. It's best to come to an agreement either directly or through mediation. And you've just heard a bit about that process, which Lynn explained and sounds really good. So Bridget, you want to take us through our next scenario here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kerry. So this is a situation where Jim is owed money. Jim won some money in a lottery in 2019. His grandson asked him for money to buy a new motorbike. Jim lent him the money, but now he wants the money repaid. However, his grandson says it was a gift.
Okay, and then what happened?
So Jim tried to get his grandson to agree to a payment plan, but his grandson says he has no money.
Okay.
Jim's friend at...
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
That's all right. Jim's friend at Bowles suggests that he ring LawAccess. They suggest that he have a look at the guided pathway for recovering money, so Jim has a go at that.
Okay. Did you want us to look at the guided pathway, Bridget?
If we've got time, we'll run through another guided pathway.
Okay, let's do that. Let's try again. Is this the recovering money one?
That's right, because this time Jim is trying to get the money back that he lent the grandson.
Okay. So what questions do we answer?
So this time, a person trying to recover money from someone else you lent money or goods to will take the first option there. And what do you need help with? So there are a few options there. I think Jim selects that he wants to send a letter of demand because he's tried a payment plan negotiation with the grandson and that hasn't worked.
Okay.
So each time you select an option, it brings up some information for you and links to, there's a sample letter of demand there. Then what response did you receive? So Jim didn't receive a response from his grandson.
Okay.
And so Jim wants to know, so this is asking who the other party is and it's a person. This is going into serving a statement of claim. So I think we've taken a wrong turn somewhere, but we could say he's served his grandson.
So served means he's given a copy to his grandson?
That's right. So when you go through a court process, if you issue a document through the court, you have to send a copy of that document to the person that you're bringing the claim against.
Okay. So we would click next.
That's right.
After reading about how it's grandson, and then it's suggesting you can either talk to a community justice centre or lawyers. Shall we go back to the presentation to see how it went?
Yeah.
So it looks like he's going to get some legal help. So how would you help, Bridget?
So I would suggest that Jim calls LawAccess to get some more information, because he's used the guided pathway. And what they do is refer him for an appointment with his local legal service. So he goes to an appointment with a lawyer, and they say that they can help him in a few ways. Firstly, they can help him to negotiate with his grandson. They can give him advice about any grounds he might have to start a claim to recover the debt. And they can explain what to expect if he goes to court. They can also refer Jim to the Community Justice Centre to try and mediate his dispute.
All right. Thanks, Bridget. Well, we'll do another poll question with our audience. So that poll question is, Jim has 2 years to bring a claim against his grandson. Is that true or false? Okay, so I'll just launch that. So here's the question. Jim has 2 years to bring a claim against his grandson. True or false? So we're just getting our audience to vote on that. People are clicking their votes. So I'll just, so we've got a bit of a mixed bag here. So 50% said true, 50% said false. So Bridget, do you want to talk us through that?
So it's actually false, the answer, because this question's getting at the issue of time limits. The law sets time limits for you to bring different types of claims, and a claim in relation to money has a 6-year time limit. So that means you have 6 years in which to bring a claim through the court to try and recover the money. And after 6 years, you lose the right to bring that claim. So you have more time than 2 years.
Okay, thank you. So
Can
here's
I
our
make a
next
comment?
Sorry.
Yes, can I make a quick comment about that particular referral just through the Community Justice Centre? It's an interesting one, because normally with the small claims, the business disputes, there's no prior relationship with people. It's purely a business transaction, and you know, a lot of emotion doesn't necessarily come into it. In this particular case, there's a lot to talk about, because they've obviously had a prior relationship. Do they want to keep that relationship going? If they do want to preserve the relationship, then, you know, there's a lot to be talked about at mediation as far as, you know, how you can resolve this dispute. We've had to do a lot of reality testing during COVID, because even if someone's saying, yes, I borrowed that money, yes, I'm going to pay it back, but they're not in a position to do that. So, you know, all of those conversations are really valid to have through a mediation. And the other thing we point out to people is, if they do go through the courts and they lodge a claim through the courts, you're talking about court costs, you're talking about legal costs if you're going to hire a legal representative. And when you're looking at the amount of money that you're talking about there, that can quickly get out of control. So there's a lot of incentive for people to come to mediation in those types of disputes. I'm just putting a plug in there, sorry.
No,
Thanks, Lynn. I mean, I would agree with that. If I were the lawyer that Jim came to get advice, I would be encouraging Jim to try mediation if me trying to negotiate with his grandson was not successful.
Great. Thank you both. So, Bridget, do you want to talk us through this next case study with Tina?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Kerry. So this last case study is about borrowing money and the need to do your research. Tina badly needed a new fridge. She had no savings. She went into a store offering quick loans. They gave her a $1,000 loan and she bought a fridge online. Tina has been paying off the loan for a year now, but she still owes $500. She can't afford to keep paying.
Okay. So what should have Tina done before she went into that store?
So if Tina had asked us for advice, then we would have suggested that she could apply for a NILS loan. So the NILS scheme is a no interest loan scheme that is available in most local neighbourhood centres, and those neighbourhood centres also offer budgeting help, and that would have been a good alternative option for Tina. Another thing that she could have done is looked on the ASIC Money Smart website. That has a lot of information about different types of money products and a lot of information about borrowing money and owing money. Another website that she could have looked at is the Financial Rights website, which has also a lot of very helpful and useful information.
Mm.
Also, Tina could have shopped around for other options. Whoops.
Do you want me to move forward about that? No, keep going there.
There's just a fact sheet that Financial Rights Legal Centre publishes, which has what questions should I ask myself before borrowing money?
Okay, thanks. And I think on that Money Smart website, there's a budgeting tool that people can use as well.
Yeah, they're both very good websites to go to.
Mm. Okay, so how can a lawyer help people who have borrowed money that they can't pay, Bridget?
A lawyer can explain different options to you if you have loans that you can't pay. So sometimes, especially with those short-term loans, the people lending the money may not have asked whether the loan was suitable for Tina and asked enough questions about her ability to repay the loan. So sometimes we can help people get an agreement from the people they owe money to with these short-term loans that they might waive some of the interest and charges on the debt because they didn't follow the process that they should have when Tina first applied for the loan. Another thing that we would do is refer Tina to a financial counselling service who can help people with who have debts, and that's a free service as well.
And that there'll be links in the email that follows the webinar to how people can find their local financial counsellor as well. So I'm going to do a final poll with our audience, and that poll question is, there are laws about how much interest can be charged on a loan, true or false? I'll just launch that now so everyone can see the poll. There it is again. There are laws about how much interest can be charged on a loan, true or false. I'm just waiting for our audience to make a choice about that, whether that's true or false, or whether people can just charge however much interest they like. Okay, so I'll close that and share the results with you. So 83% said true and 17% said false. What's the answer there, Bridget?
The answer is true, so most of you are correct there. Because these short-term loan businesses are around, and often people who may not, for various reasons, be able to get a loan through a bank, there's often vulnerable people who take up these short-term loan options and then find themselves very quickly in a difficult financial situation. And if you work out how much they've paid in interest over the life of the loan, it can sometimes be extremely high. So there is a cap on how much interest can be charged.
Okay, thank you. So, Bridget, we'll run through these services about who can help when we've got money problems. So here's the first one.
So yes, firstly, Community Justice Centre mediations, the Financial Rights Legal Centre for both legal advice and financial counselling, Legal Aid New South Wales or your local community legal centre, and your local financial counselling service. Also, if you have a complaint about an organisation, then there are various ombudsmen that you can complain to.
Okay. I guess lawyers can tell people about the ombudsmans, or is there a place they can find out more about those?
Well, it does depend on the situation, but there is the Australian Financial Complaints Authority, AFCA, is often a place where if you have a dispute with a finance company that you might find yourself going to if you want to bring a complaint.
Okay. So where can people get help? So up on the slide now, you can see the phone number for LawAccess New South Wales, 1300 888 529. They're a free legal help service, telephone service, but they also have a live chat on their website now, which means that you're actually talking to someone at LawAccess, not a bot, as many websites give you that option. They're open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. So as well as legal information, they also make referrals to the legal services like the ones that Bridget has just spoken about. You can also try those guided pathways, which we've just demonstrated to you, and there's a link to that web page in the email following the webinar. So there's 9 in total, I think, guided pathways now up on the LawAccess New South Wales website. You can obviously contact the Community Justice Centre as one of your best friends when it comes to money problems. And Lynn's put a face to the CJC, which is great. You can see the mediators are very friendly people. And yeah, as I said, you can call LawAccess for a referral to your local legal service. So we've got time now for questions. That's the end of our webinar. So I haven't had any questions to date, so people might be thinking about questions now, the people who are attending our webinar. And we've definitely got time for that. So I'll just see if that comes up. But while I'm waiting for the questions, I'll thank you both, Bridget and Lynn, for your time today. I'd also like to thank Kat and Therese for their Auslan interpreting. I really appreciate that. And thanks to everyone for coming along and participating. And a reminder that we'll get a feedback survey after the webinar, so we'd love to hear your feedback, and an email which will contain links to the resources and organisations that we spoke about today. So we haven't had any questions. We've had a thank you. So I think we might be off the hook when it comes to questions at this webinar. Did you have anything?
Could I ask a question?
Yeah, Lynn, yeah, do you have anything to add or a question of Richard?
Well, I have a question because I've learned a lot today, and the thing I surprised me the most was that all of the people, nobody knew about the guided pathways, and myself included, and it just looks like such a useful resource. So I wonder how you get that message out there to people that it's available.
Well, hopefully through this webinar and other talks that have been given through the libraries this week. Yes, it's very helpful, and you can go back and do it and select different options and see what information comes up. You're not restricted to just doing it the once. So you could think, okay, well, you know, I might take this, see what happens if I decide I want to take legal action, but you could also, you know, select different options and see what information is given to you. So you could work your way through every possible scenario in relation to your legal problem. And that way you have all the options available to you.
And we're encouraging community workers to also see them as a tool to sit with their clients if their client doesn't have that computer literacy, as a way to sort of explore the different options before they make a referral. So,
and I'd also like to thank LawAccess and Legal Aid for the support that they give to the community justice centres, because we've had similar issues in the past if people haven't heard about us until they're well and truly in the, you know, embroiled in a dispute. So the fact that was very encouraging to see that was it 80% of people had actually heard about the community justice centres. So you know, it's really good that we're getting that level of support as well.
Definitely. And so that's been the whole point of Law Week 2021 for Legal Aid New South Wales and Community Justice Centres partnering to deliver these webinars, but also workshops across the state, either on Zoom or face-to-face, to raise awareness about our services, community justice centres, the guided pathways, and the LawAccess New South Wales phone number as a way to start the conversation about people's legal problems. So, as you say, it's great that we can all be working together to ensure people know the best place to go before things get too big.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we don't have any questions. Bridget, did you have anything to add? Or
no, only to suggest that if you do have a legal problem, exploring the LawAccess website is a good idea. There's a wealth of information there on all sorts of different legal problems, and it includes sample documents and takes you through a lot of links and information. It's a really helpful resource for people.
Definitely. All right, well, we might leave the webinar then, and I'll say goodbye to both of you and to our interpreters. Thank you very much for your help today, and we'll this is a recorded webinar, so it'll go up on the Legal Aid New South Wales YouTube channel hopefully this afternoon. So thanks again, Bridget and Lynn, and we look forward to welcoming our listeners to our next Law for Community Workers webinar. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks
Bye, Lynn.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
Kat.